Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Powerful Man Show. I am your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host, Tim, the Powerful Man Matthews. How you doing, brother?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Well. I'm feeling nice and light, which is
Good.
nice.
Good. You look nice and light. But we were having an interesting conversation. It wasn't as light before we hit record, but also kind of funny. We have banter back and forth. You know, someone told me, Tim, that they actually found it funny and enjoyable because they can tell that you and I were talking trash back and forth before we hit record because we're laughing before we do it, which we do talk a lot of trash, just like you would with any of your friends, right, guys? And that's, you know, when you're working with somebody doing something that you love, helping people around the world, it's just easy to have a good time, and a little trash talking doesn't hurt every once in a while.
Yeah, it's nice. You got to be able to give it and take it on our team. So there's no getting away from it.
There's none. I mean, we have several women that work for the movement, and they're just invested in it, and they talk just as much trash, right? It's really,
God, yeah.
It's really a family affair and a family feel. And it's funny when you look at, guys, your core values, or you go through all these kind of rudimentary exercises you do in business, and you look around at all the people on the screen, and you look at the commonalities. You know, everybody in our team, growth oriented, was off the charts. Having each other's back, integrity was off the charts as far as ratings go, but also having fun and, you know, kind of talking trash, but doing so in a manner that is loving, right? So when you talk trash, but you also know the other person has your back and best interest in mind at heart, just makes it much more enjoyable because nobody gets triggered by something that's said. It just becomes light.
Okay, it gives you permission to be a bit of a dick.
I think that's exactly what you said at the meeting was, okay, what I'm hearing you guys say is I could be more of a jerk. You said dick, but
yeah.
I think I said, I don't know if that's possible.
Yep. So here's something I'm curious to hear your opinion about. What patterns have you worked on, generational patterns that you've seen, that you maybe witnessed growing up, right? That you pointed out and were like, right, I want to change those for Bodhi or for Aspen, you know? And maybe you're still on the process of discovering some of those and changing them. I'm guessing you might have had a few in mind prior to having kids.
Yep.
What were they?
Well, yeah, so I've thought long and hard about this. In fact, so much so that as soon as I knew I was having a son, which is my first child, I decided to book a trip down to the Amazon rainforest and do plant ceremonies with ayahuasca and other plants. And the goal of me doing that was simply to discover or remove unconscious patterns I didn't know I had. And I did it because I felt that I'm bringing this child into the world. There's a little bit of an oh shit responsibility moment, but I also knew I didn't know what I didn't know, which is so cliche, right? You don't know what you don't know. But I knew that. We all know that. And so I decided to eat my own cooking, which is take massive action, right? Massive action. I don't know what this is going to be. I'm a little scared, right? It's Colombia, by the way. So it's the northern part of the Amazon. Most people, I didn't know at the time, the Amazon goes into Colombia. So I flew down to Colombia to do this exploration into myself and to help out Bodhi. So I share that all with you just to let you know that I've been in this thought process. So some of the familial patterns, generational patterns is what you said, that I have consciously worked on breaking. One is sarcasm, right? In my household, sarcasm.
And how do you think that's going?
Well, and I'll tell you how it's going. Sarcasm was the common language, right? I grew up in a house. My brothers are 7 and 10 years older than I am, both very accomplished athletes. So sports were big in my house, playing competition. Everything was a competition. Going up the stairs was a race every day. Going down the stairs was a race every day. Getting food, right? Not getting your food stolen. Everything was a joke and was competitive and was picked apart. And so what I learned early on is not everybody does that. And it was hard to break. And my wife actually talked to me about is, yeah, hey, sarcasm's amazing. It's when it's mean sarcasm That's where the issue is. When you're being sarcastic to be a dick, essentially. Honestly, I didn't realize the difference, you know? I thought it was funny. It was funny to me. You know, most of the time I was just being sarcastic, but there was a biting sarcasm that occurs in my family, which I didn't see. And not everybody in my family, by the way. I don't want to single people out or throw people under the bus because some of my family listens to this show. And not that they would be surprised by any of this, but there's a biting sarcasm that is really an asshole, right? It's really what it is. It'd be like me making a sarcastic, joke.
Careful.
Like a common one in my family might be, "Hey, Tim, nice haircut. Do they do men's hair where you go?" That's kind of funny and joking. But then when it goes deeper down, if I start attacking something that's really done so at a jerk level, right? That it goes to. So that's one that I've really worked diligently for my kids, for Bodhi, for Aspen, my daughter, as well as for my marriage and my friendship and for me.
Okay. And I'm curious, have you ever had any conversations with your father about his upbringing or what he experienced as a kid? Essentially, what I'm really asking here is, where they came from. Like, I'm guessing you witnessed your dad doing this, I'm guessing, or did you guys just come up with it yourself?
No. My dad definitely does. I mean, I can just go over things there's a list of things that I've wanted to change that my dads do. My brothers to different degrees. They're both very different men. One of my other brothers worked really hard at breaking this too. Okay. And my second brother, I should say, my second brother doesn't do this. He does the joking really well and has also worked on getting rid of the biting sarcasm that my father does regularly, right? And it's kind of known for in not a great way. So yes, I have had conversations with my father on his upbringing. My dad's one that doesn't talk much about it. And, my dad grew up on a farm in Ohio, which is, for those that aren't in the U.S., it's the central part of the United States, lots of farms, some hills, trees, etc. So he grew up on that and wanted to get out of that area as soon as possible. He became a very accomplished executive for Eastman Kodak and moved on to other companies. So that was one. And he was raised with some of that. I think some of that was also developed. There's a load of things that I've wanted to develop. One is sharing more, right? My dad comes from that generation where you just don't talk about things. You don't talk about money. You don't talk about your problems. You ask people. My dad's extremely loving. He wants to know everything that's going on in everybody else's life. Then he wants to fix it if he can, but he doesn't really like sharing anything about him, right? So as an example, my dad gets cancer. It's like, yeah, you might find out about it maybe. And he's not going to share much about it, period, with you. And so it's hard to have connection with somebody who's not, connecting back, as you can relate. So that's something I'm working on with my son and my daughter in developing that. But my kids are really young. So really it's about being present for me right now.
I think that's you said something there that was really interesting, that piece about sharing. And I totally get it because, as you know, I was in Leeds at the weekend visiting friends and family. Can do it because travels for work, offices in Leeds. Just saying. And
it's anybody's listening.
If anyone's listening. And yeah, it was great to see my friends and family. And it was also very interesting at the same time because living where we live and setting up our own home, as you know, you can really make it what you want it to be, right? And then being in the kind of conversations that we're in every day, be it with you or Arthur, the team, or the men, to then go back to Leeds and be put back in that environment, in particular the home environment where my sister lives at home with mum and dad, I could really see the dysfunction. And I know some of them listen to this show, and I don't mean this in a negative way. It's just really an observation that creates distance between us. And part of it is because my sister competes with me. And then she competes with me and then doesn't want to share what she has going on because she feels inferior, right? Which no need for her to feel that way, in my opinion, anyway. And then it makes it really difficult to connect because she doesn't want to ask me what I've got going on. If she does, she tries to make it about her. And then if I try to ask her about what she's got going on, she doesn't want to answer because she's comparing. So the point I'm making here is when there's no sharing, there's no connection.
Sure.
The same with my dad to a large degree. You know, he doesn't really share. And I was sat around the dinner table on Friday evening and I was just asking him, now, what was your upbringing like? You know, how are you disciplined? And he said that his father, so my grandfather, used to make them, when they'd done something bad, but that's even a loose relative term, right? What defines bad? And he said when you did something bad, what would happen is he'd make you stand there with your arms out and put 2 boots on your arms. And if your arms dropped, you'd then get hit with the belt. And I'm like, that's like torture. He's like, yeah, but we were disciplined. I'm like, yeah, but there's different ways to create discipline. I mean, how did you then relate to him and open up? And the point I'm making is he'd repeat the generational pattern in many respects with me. He didn't ever make me stand there with my arms out with boots on them. But the lack of openness that was experienced between him and his father, he then passed on to our relationship. For a long time, you know, we've done a lot of work on this together, but there was a long time where there was, I wouldn't say there was a relationship because he wasn't willing to open and share. He wouldn't ask me about he'd ask me little things about my life, but he had so much darkness within his life that he wasn't willing to share about that then blocked him from really connecting, at least with me. So coming back to you, Doug, when you talk about, you know, sharing piece is something I've really worked on. I think there's a lot of guys that are listening that I imagine can probably relate to holding back and not wanting to share and maybe wanting to put on a certain demeanor as a father. So they're not sharing certain things. So I'm kind of curious, how do you share and I know that obviously Bodhi's young, but how do you share with Bodhi and well, more so Bodhi because Aspen's even younger. And how do you think that might evolve as he grows up? What's your plan there?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to state that I've had the advantage of coaching in one way or another for over 20 years, right? And I share that only because I'm in the conversation of being very conscious and intentional a lot. And I think a lot of men aren't in that conversation a lot. So therefore, the idea of being a conscious father, it sounds like Fruit Loops, right? It sounds crazy. But it's something that I've been lucky enough to be in. And I've sought out other fathers who I thought do a great job. My brother, right? Both of my brothers, for that matter, are amazing fathers. And I look to them as role models and as way of looking. And I also, what I've learned, Tim, is never to judge another man, like never, my father included, right? I don't know what that upbringing was. You don't know why your grandfather did the boots, you know, or what have you. And what was torture, what's torture now probably wasn't torture then, right? Or commonly thought there. So it's hard to judge from the lens of today, yesterday is the way I look at it. But how do again, guys, for those listening, my son's turning 4 here. So those conversations aren't deep by any means, right? My son's in that stage where he asks why for everything. And any father that's got kids older than 4 knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, well, why? Okay, well, why would you put boots? Well, why on the arms? Well, what would happen? Why would you get the belt? What kind of belt? You know, it's like, it's those kind of, so I share things with them. And my plan moving forward with my son is to share, I don't want to say everything, because I don't know if I plan on sharing everything with him per se as he gets older. When he gets older, I have no problem. I'm transparent, as you know, Tim. But I plan on deliberately sharing financial information with him and finances. And my dad didn't share that with me. Now, hindsight being 2020, my dad was going through a divorce with my mom, right? I'm a kid. I'm telling everything my mom. I'm telling everything my mom says to my dad. And I just think everything's amazing and they're going to get back together, right? So I'm 4 or 5. So I understand why my dad never talked about those things, right? My dad was also successful in his own right. So there's also that idea that if you share financial information with people, they get jealous. You and I have had this conversation. So, when it comes to sex, right? I plan on sharing things. Do I plan on sharing what he and his mom and I are doing? Or excuse me, what his mom and I are doing? Probably not, right? That's none of his business. There's certain things that I don't need to go into depth with him, and unless he really has questions, which I don't see him asking, what's the swing above the bed for, Dad, or anything like that. I don't know
if you just walk in one night and you catch him using it. He's got his girlfriend in there.
So, I guess coming full circle, it's a hard question for me to answer, but my anticipation, like the conversation about sex, is to have that early on, right? I already talked to him about what it means, difference between boys and girls, a penis, what it means. The guy's always grabbing his penis, right? He's a little kid. And we talk about it, right? And it's like, hey, man, yeah, it feels good. I get it sometimes, but here's what we do. Here's what we choose not to do. Why, Dad? Well, it's society's rules. What's society? So we talk about those kinds of conversations and conventions, which truthfully makes me question things. Like, why the heck don't we do? Why can't we walk outside and just pee? Right. Or whatever. I mean, I have property, so I can, but telling my son, well, you can't do that at the park. You can't do that at, over other places or friends' houses. Well, why isn't that acceptable? And so you have a deeper level of conversation that makes you question things as a father, as a man, as a human. But coming back to the original question, right, of the familial bonds you want to break. Well, one of them is my family, again, going back to a farm, was very much, delineated on what a father did and didn't do. The father steps in and disciplines, which I do. The father steps in at certain times, but I also make sure that I'm very involved in all aspects of my son's life. I've deliberately chose business decisions based on my lifestyle rather than just money. I've turned down considerable amounts of money. I got rid of 2 companies, as you know, that I had just so I could maintain the lifestyle to be there for my son, to go to swim lessons occasionally, and I don't do it all the time, but to be able to do things that weren't as available seemingly to my family.
It's really important, isn't it? Having, again, role models. You got your brothers, right? Mm-hmm. Which is great. And yeah, I find it really interesting because, again, when I was in Leeds, I think maybe because I've been out of that environment, and I've not lived there for a long time, but even still, it just seems different being, I guess I'm just in a different environment these days. So when I go back, it's even more of a contrast than I would have noticed before. And it really stood out to me this time, the distance that was being created by the generational patterns that had been passed on. And I wasn't okay with it. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't okay with it not from a place of anger, but from a place of real love and respect for my family, right? For example, my sister. And I messaged, what you don't know, because we spoke about this when I was there. So yesterday on the way back, I just messaged my sister and said, hey, I'm totally open to being wrong about this and this being my thing, but I got the impression that you didn't want to see me whilst I was up. I got the impression that you didn't really want me there, which is fine, by the way. And I'm totally open to being wrong. But just, let me know. I'd love to clean this up. And she said, no, you're right. I didn't realize it. And I did want to see you. And I was like, look, don't lie. You didn't. And that's okay. Because if you did, you would have. Mm-hmm. And it's okay that you didn't. But let's just stop the lies. Let's just stop pretending that you did and pretending that you don't compare when you do. Because it's the lie that is keeping the distance between us. And then my dad, there's things that have gone on in the past with him, between my mum and dad in their relationship. And they've never been spoken about. And these are like big deals that shape the course of a relationship. infidelity, for example. And it's never been talked about, ever. Which I get it, right? I get the shame that my dad must carry, and I feel like I can see it on him. I get the stress and the burden that it must be, or create rather, to carry that with you. And to not have the tools to be able to have the conversation, to not have the tools to be able to, all the people around you, to be able to lean on, right? And again, it makes me really grateful for the time that we're living today. We've got the internet, we've got tools, we've got books, we've got Audible, we've got great people like you that I can connect with. It's incredible. So I really get why. Well, not why. I get what contributed to his silence, if you will. But it's still affecting the relationship today. The lie that is there is creating distance between him and my mum. Which then we sat at the dinner table and my mum then, says something and my dad's angry because mum doesn't want to go out with him on a weekend. But really, it's not about her being boring. It's the fact that, hey, there's these lies that have never been cleaned up. So long story short, anyway, got back yesterday and I just said, guys, I want to get together with you all. We've got probably the last 10 15 years of our lives together. Last 25% of our life together. I want to make the most of it. And there are cracks that I see that are not big cracks, but just like anything, they're not being tended to, and they're turning into bigger cracks that are really shaking the foundations of our family, and they could easily be fixed. And I want to invite you all onto a Zoom. I didn't say a time. I just said, I want to invite you all onto a Zoom, in fact. And I want to get this out in the open. And I want to clear this up once and for all because it's ridiculous. Caroline thinks this about me and she's making a story up. She thinks this person thinks this about that person. It's just ridiculous. I don't care about what's happened in the past. You might not have chosen to take on the generational pattern that took over you. And as a result, instead of taking it on, you've passed it on. But this isn't about showing up on a blame game and talking about the past and making people feel bad. It's just about getting all the lies on the table so we can move forward with honesty together so those generational patterns don't persist, right? And, kudos to those guys. They all said yes. We'll be having a talk on Friday morning. But I think it's such an important conversation to be in, the idea of breaking generational patterns, because I think some guys either aren't aware or they feel bad. They don't want to judge, like you said, the parents, because the parents did the best they could.
Yeah.
And you don't have to judge it, whilst also recognizing what you'd like to maybe take. Because Tony Robbins says it brilliantly, right? If you're going to blame them for everything that went wrong, you've got to blame them for everything they did wrong. You've got to blame them for everything they did right as well. My mum and dad did some amazing, my dad in particular, because that's where the generational patterns are mostly. He did some amazing things, right? There's a lot of positives and strengths to be taken from it. And there are some things that I'd prefer to just shift a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, when my father visits, last time he visited, he pulled me aside because we had some conflicts, right? In the way that he was acting around my kids, right? And he pulled me aside and said, I'm really impressed with the father you've become and the way that you interact with your kids. And it's kudos to my wife too. But for the guys listening, this is something my wife and I talk about regularly. And if you guys are going through a hard time in your marriage, this is important, right? Specifically important is our kids are looking at us as role models on what a relationship means, right? My parents separated when I was 4, divorced when I was 5, about that, right? And again, this isn't a blame for it, but that's I share that with you because that's the lens that I come through. And that's something that's very important to me to be able to pass on to my kids. One is to be happy in your relationship, in your marriage. But 2 is how do we treat each other? Right? Our kids are always watching. I mean, they're friggin' parrots, man. Like they repeat everything you say and do. And it's hilarious and scary at the same time. But that also comes in to be a big play. And I had to sit down, talk conversation with my dad. Right. And he said, hey, look, how can we make these trips better? And I said, you know what? Here's how we can do it. One, and this parlays into what you're saying, but I said, look, one thing is you come down here and every time you come down, you make a big joke and my stepmom about you don't care about seeing us. It's all about the kids. And it's a joke, but it's one of those jokes that gets told 100 times. You're like, okay, it's not even funny, right? Oh, we don't even care about you guys. We just want to see the grandkids. Oh, you guys can go do whatever. We don't care. Oh, the only reason you guys need to be alive is so the grandkids are okay. But it just gets to be like, it doesn't offend me in any way, shape, or form. So I'm telling my dad that. I'm like, great, you do that all the time, fine. And you come down here and you just sit on your phone. You don't interact with them like at all. Like very little. You don't get on the floor and play with them. They're 4. My son's 3. My daughter's just turned 1. Like there's no contact. You're here for 3 days. And, it feels as if, now we got to take care of the 2 kids and then take care of you guys. And it was a very real conversation, which my dad, to his credit, one of his strengths is he loves, I won't say brutal honesty, but he loves that level of like, hey, someone being real with him. And so it turned out to be a great conversation. The next day, my dad was on the floor, somewhat begrudgingly, but I'm also, again, I come from that household. It's very easy for me to be sarcastic and joke, but I'm throwing cracks left, right, and center about, hey, you're going to be on the floor, aren't you? And making jokes to him. And he did. And he interacted with the kids and he played with them. And he kind of talked about like, look, in his generation, and I've talked about this with my mom, kids are supposed to be seen, not heard. Right. In my house, it's very different. Right. We're letting the kids explore their identities. There's rules, but rules are like gravity in my house. They just don't get broken. Right. There's no wiggle room for these rules because the kids are all pushing their boundaries. But point being is, I'm very intentional and I am so far from a perfect father, so far. But I'm very conscious about my parenting, about being a dad, extremely conscious. And that's why we have Arthur is one of my role models too. And Mark and the other coaches. That's why we're coming out with the Powerful Father course, right? It's ready. It's released. The guys in the Brotherhood have been through kind of an intro and it's mind changing. And it's men that are what I would call real men. And I'm going to throw me in there, but guys, right? This isn't like, just tree huggers and things like, when I was looking for conscious fathers, a lot of the guys I ran into, like I just couldn't relate to. These are real guys that, have testosterone and are trying consciously to be a better father, a better dad, not only for themselves, but also for their kids. They want to be that role model. And they're, kids of all ages. They're talking about kids. How do you deal with your kids want to play video games and kids are going to throw tantrums and what have you. So we talk about breaking familial bonds and patterns. For me, it's consciously, where do I want my kids to end up? Like how can I best serve them without being a helicopter parent? Because we're not. How do I let them get their bumps and bruises and then help them with their development? And part of that for me, Tim, is learning as much as I can from great guys like the other coaches that we have.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think what you said is great. One thing we ask the men when they apply for the program, if they say they have children, okay, well, what effect is this having on the kids?
Yeah.
The fact that there's warring in the marriage. And for a lot of the guys that come to us, they have repeated generational patterns. Most. And they've not been aware of it, right? And it's a very easy thing to do. I was repeating them for a long time within relationships. And yeah. Anyway, that's a different story. But point I'm making is I think this topic gets so lost in the conversation with the men coming to the activation method because I'm not a father, but I do have access to a lot of great fathers and a lot of great men that work on themselves. And the shifts that they see in their kids when they do the work, to me, says that the kids must have been paying a price before in order for the kids to improve. And whether it's just to become happier, they become more outgoing, they start to pursue passions that they weren't, they start to talk more around the dinner table, they start to be more, whatever it is, right? Because the father's there, he's leading the house, he's present, he's been the CFO, all the things we talk about. I think for a lot of guys, it's too painful for them to really own up to the impact it's having on their kids when there is a problem in the marriage. And I get that. And the reality is it will be having an effect.
Huge huge. Man, I'm so pumped up about this conversation because the guys don't see it until after they go through the activation method because they're so ingrained in their own shit.
Mm-hmm.
They're so bummed and they don't know how to do it. So the guys turn to going out with the other guys. They don't know what to do with the kids or how to relate to the kids. So they turn to the TV or they turn to work, right? Because they're just like, I just don't know how to relate. I was doing a monthly review with one of the guys in the inner circle. This guy's awesome. And he's done so much work. He went through the activation method, as you're aware, and then jumped right into the inner circle. And one of the things he said to me, and I won't say who it is, so I'm sure he doesn't mind me sharing this. And we were talking about like, hey, how's it going? Right? Because got to remember, this guy came in through the program, or you know it at least, and on the brink of divorce. Like, do I leave? And so I'm like, well, how are things going? How's the work? Our monthly reviews are very systematic. He filled it out and we have a conversation. And he's like, Doug, you know what? And by the way, he had a horrible time with his kids. But that's my definition, not his, although I think his would be the same. Kids acted up, didn't know how to relate, just didn't have a really good relationship with his children. He walked in the door and his daughter jokingly like made him give her a hug, which doesn't normally happen. But he said something that really touched me because I could feel it, right? I could feel him feeling the memory. He's like, Doug, my son just came running down the hall. I could see his hair flopping down because he has a long hallway where he lives, and just jumped into his arms, right? And he said, Daddy, I love you. He's like, Doug, that's a memory I will never, ever forget the rest of my life. And it brings like tears to my eyes, right? And it's not even my son. Like, unless he had done the work through the activation method and now things he's doing in the inner circle, odds are he would never have that experience. And what I shared with him, Tim, was more importantly to me, his son has that same experience. His son is now learning what it means to be a dad in a different lens. Like he wasn't around. He focused on work. I'm just going to work because that was a good escape for him. Now he's leading in the home. He's being the leader he's being the chief fun officer, and he's working at it as we all are. As a dad, there's no friggin' manual, right? There's none. We're working on a course that'll help guys have some, it's like putting the guardrails up when you go bowling, the little bumpers that slide up. It's putting those up for fathers and saying, okay, here are some guardrails that you can go through. Their universal principles. This guy's applying them and is reaping the benefits. And he's seeing it too. He's like, oh my gosh, one kid was in therapy and now she's not acting out as much. Wonder what's changed. Has the kid changed? No. The kid's reacting to the environment that they're in.
And guys, if you'd like to get on the waiting list for that program, head over to thepowerfulfather.com. and just pop your name and email in there. But anyway, on a side note, Doug, I have a feeling we could talk about this for a long time. I'm not a father yet, but I'm very passionate about fatherhood, just from what I've experienced and witnessed. And it's, yeah, anyway. And obviously you are very passionate about it. So instead of going on for another few hours, what about having, why not? 3 things these guys can do right now if they, maybe things they have an inkling they could be a better father. This whole topic of breaking generational patterns, maybe it's striking a little chord with them. And they'd like to improve. What can they do?
Yeah, guys, first of all, make a choice. Are you going to be a conscious father, or are you just going to be the guy that donates the sperm? Right? That's harsh. I get it. But fuck, it's true, right? You guys know about being dad's not easy, no matter who you are. But you can tell when you see a great dad versus an okay dad at the barbecue who's faking it a little bit or trying. But choose to be a great dad. Choose now. I mean, this is one of the things in your life, rocking chair test. When you're 80, you're looking back at your life. Being an amazing father, like that's something you can hang your hat on, right? And just be there. Be the dad that the kids want to see. And to Tim's story about his sister not wanting to see him, are you going to be the father that gets just gets the Christmas card and the birthday card and text? Or are you going to be the father the kids want to come see or turn to for advice, life advice? Hey, Dad, I'm having a problem in my marriage. How'd you do it? Right? Not versus the dad like, I'm having a problem in my marriage. I'm definitely not talking to my dad about it because he can't do it. So that's one. Make a choice is what I'm trying to say. Second thing you can do is sit down and look at the patterns of your family, the things that you didn't like, right? You can do the things you like too, but the things that you didn't like that you think are a little bit different by the way you were raised. And notice if those are playing out in your life. Chances are you're disciplining similarly. Chances are you're doing things similarly to the way you were raised because you probably haven't thought about it, right? I know I didn't. I just had the advantage of being in this coaching environment for so long that I knew that I got to think about it. And step 3 is make a decision, right? If you're going to step into this, find some role models, find some men that aren't doing it perfectly because nobody is, but that are working on doing it better, right? They're in the conversation of better. It's just like the concept, Tim, is, if you want to get in shape, hang out with people who are in shape. Hang out with people who are working out a lot, right? You don't want to hang out with people who are getting beer and pizza every night if you're trying to get in shape, because you're going to end up drinking beer and eating pizza and getting fatter, right? It's the bottom line. So go over to the website that Tim mentioned. Tim, what was the website again?
thepowerfulfather.com.
So go over to thepowerfulfather.com and put in your name for the waiting list and find out some more information. I've firsthand know the coaches that created it, that started it, and this is their life's mission. I mean, their life's mission is to help fathers. And they're absolutely amazing. There are coaches that run the activation method and the brotherhood. And these are 2 dads that combined, have spent a ton of time and money and resources on learning what it means to be a great dad. And they're the guys I learn from, right? And the guys that I seek out for advice and as role models. So guys, always just take action. You got to make a decision and get off the fence. So once your eyes are open, you got to move forward. And it's not easy, right? It's never always easy, but dude, being connected to your kid and playing with them and seeing them grow and develop and them coming to you for advice and for just wanting to spend time with you, God, that warms your heart and it just feels so good. So gentlemen, if any of this resonates with you, just take action, right? Just take some action. And, obviously it's something I'm passionate about as a father, as a person, and the Powerful Father is something that I'm really looking forward to seeing us launching and bring it. The course is ready. It's been ready. And we've run through it with a couple betas just to prove the model that it works for all fathers and everybody's had exceptional experience. I want you guys to do it for them. I had no idea that we were going to talk about this today, Tim. So I appreciate you bringing this to the table. It's fueled me up with energy. Gentlemen, have an amazing day. And as always, just do the work, right? That's what we're here for. We're just here to provide some insights. And it's up to you guys to actually do the lifts, do the work yourself. Guys, we'll see you next time on The Powerful Man Show.